So today we're going to be making a plant pot. So I'm going to be doing this in Fusion 360. I already have a model preloaded of approximate dimensions of the plant pot and kind of the size of the leaves. No detail is really needed for that. This is just for reference. I'm going to start off by making a wall. I'm only really making the wall because of how I want the final steps to turn out. I want it to kind of flow into the wall so it looks like it's kind of one piece coming out of it. So I'm going to need that for the final process, so I'm going to make it initially so that I have something to reference off of. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of consider the functionality of it. I need it to be a certain size to be able to hold the soil and the plant itself. And then I also need to be able to have a little bit of extra space on both sides for the outside, the perimeter, and just adding strength to it. So taking all those into consideration. And then the first rectangle, this is going to be how much space I want to have standoff between the backing of the print and the plant pot, not necessarily from the plant pot to the wall. So I'm going to do that first, and then I'm going to have the standoff between that backing and the plant pot itself. So I got the first dimension, and now I'm going to do a little line. This is going to be the second standoff. And then I'm going to make a two-pointed circle. This is going to be the top diameter of the plant pot. So I'm using the plant pot itself for reference. I get the general size of it. And then I'm going to do a rectangle to kind of cover the rest of it. So I did that sketch on the very bottom surface, so I'm going to have to use a two-sided extrusion to pull it up towards the center. Get the approximate size, then add just a little bit because I still have to put the base to it. So I'm going to have to do the same process to raise that base up. And once that base is raised up, this will hold a plant pot to the wall. But it's likely not going to stick to the wall too well. If someone bumps into it, it's going to fall off. There's sharp corners to kind of catch, and the water won't drain. So the first one I'm going to do is the more functional one of the water draining. So I'm going to use a chamfer on the bottom edge, and then a fillet to finish the rounding. So this should direct all the water towards that very center point. Then at that center point, I'm going to make a hole for drainage. This is kind of a rough estimate of how much space I think is needed to drain, but not for the soil to fall out. Then I'm going to extrude that all the way out. So now it should stick to the wall and drain. So I decided the next part, just because I know this is one feature I want. I want to have a little backing to it. This backing is so that the soil and the plant aren't going to be touching the wall. Like nothing can kind of go behind it and get between the wall and the mount. Then I'm going to round off this front edge because I know that's definitely something I want. I don't want those sharp corners, so if someone hits it, it doesn't catch as much. Your hand will just like slide off, or your shoulder, or however you bump into it. And then I'm looking at the drainage at the very bottom. So this drainage at the bottom, I'm concerned that when water drains, it's going to stick to the bottom surface of it and go to one of the edges and drain off from there, or even go to the wall and drain down the wall. So I did a little extrusion and then round it off so it's a little bit lower. And then I'm going to round off the very bottom of it as well. I still have a slight concern that water might drain off to the sides a little bit, so I'm going to repeat that process of extruding it out and then fillet the edges. So at this point, I'm pretty confident that the water will drain directly from that point. So I'm just going to go ahead and round this corner off so that water, or the printing process, works a little bit better. So it's starting to look a little bit better, but one thing is I don't like this shelf at the very back. So having that there, soil could build up there, and generally just don't need it. It doesn't serve much function, and that top part is also a little bit weaker. So I'm going to round that off, and then I'm also going to round off the edges. All right, and then missed one round feature, or one corner up here, so that now I can do the very reason why I put the wall there in the first place, and that is to round the entire thing off. So now it kind of protrudes from the wall itself. It looks like it's kind of part of it, I think. So I'm pretty happy with how that looks. Now I need to detach it from the wall. So I'm going to use a split face or split on face. Split there. Just turn off all the backing, the sketches, and now I have a plant pot. However, because it did round right into the wall, it's very thin on the edges, and the printer doesn't handle that too well. So I'm gonna make a back or extrude from the back 1 millimeter, just so that there's no really thin areas of it. And then I'm gonna bring it over to slicer. So I do polycarbonate because I think it'll handle the soil and the roots a little bit better. Tried it out with PETG and had some issues. Consider doing supports everywhere, but rather take the chance with it printing that very top overhang than have to remove all the supports from the very center. That could take a little bit of time, as well as cause additional issues with how the finish looks. So pretty happy with how this slice looks. Pretty well. I think there was a little bit too much material. Could have done lower infill. Maybe. Oh, also, it did end up warping the bed and had a layer shift that I tried adjusting. It wasn't too bad, so I decided to keep it going. And not too bad of an overhang at the very top either. So here's the final product. Pretty happy with how it turned out. Holds the plant. You can water it, drains out the bottom. Do need to design something for the water to fall into because it just goes to the ground right now. That is next project. But anyways, thanks for watching. And if you want the model, you can find it on Cults 3D or on Patreon.